Peace, world. How you doing? It's your brother Mikey Fever, NYP Talk Show, the 8 p.m. session. We got our special guest, Dr. Dyer, in the building. Oh, he just fell out real quick. But yeah, we got Dr. Dyer in the building who will be talking about positive action, deleting the physical illusion of sickness. You know what I'm saying? Grab your pens and your pad. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, super chat. Peace to everyone out there. Peace to the gods, peace to earth, peace to the Moors. Hebrew Israelite. We just had a Nuwapian on. Peace to him. Great show. Good brother. And let's just rock out. What's up, Dr. Dyer?
How you doing, man? That was, let me tell you something about that show.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Right? What is, so many people are not knowing what they're missing.
Yeah, we got to get the brother back on. We just want to talk about his journey, but he said he got something he wants to add on with sound healing, which I know will be a very interesting show to learn about sound healing, which is important. So we got to bring him back into the fold to expound on that, because it's all about healing here.
And we've been talking about the brain and a lot about so many other issues, and if people just put the shows together, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If they put the shows together about the science of symbolisms, the science of the historical context of how we miss things, the information of the moral sciences or the Masonic sciences, and if you literally put it together like you're reading a book, you would understand, like, not only did I not understand this, but the reason I didn't understand this is because I was being blocked by this frequency. I was being blocked by this experience. I was being blocked by this epigenetics issue that I did not know how to resolve because I didn't know the function of my own self.
Exactly. Yeah. You're right, because I'm listening to that last show. The brother was like, you could tell, very like sound. I mean, not taken away from him, because he explained his journey and he's putting pieces together. And I was like, yo, that's dope, compared to many others who just be all out there. But he was, very prompt in what he was saying, on point with his journey, what he had learned, to build himself up.
Because here's, I want people to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
If people didn't get it yet by now, is that humans have been studied. All things have been studied. The stars, the planets, plants, Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Black humans, melanin people, have been studied the most.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
The reason why they've been studied the most is because they've been here the longest.
Mm-hmm.
They've adapted the most, which is why we expanded throughout the planet in shapes, and right. So we've been studied all the genetics, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all the things we've been studied. Well, here's what's puzzling to me sometimes is when I got being into science is how come we've never studied ourselves? We have been studied, and we have been studied to either help, like me, myself, and other amazing people on this planet, and we have been studied to manipulate.
Yep. Unfortunately.
So I always wonder why we don't really study who we are so we can be the creator who we are, so we become the I am of who we are, so we can develop of what we want to be. Have you ever heard of archaeopsychology?
Never have. Care to elaborate,
Well,
teach us?
what archaeopsychology is, you study artifacts of things that a person had when they passed. The material things that they've had in the past. So they find, after you pass, Mikey, and they look at the things you have in your life, like your hats, right, or your whatever you have. They tell the psychological story of you.
Okay, I got you saying.
Right.
I get
so it studies like I study human condition, human behavior, but they'll study the human condition from your materials. Like what your behavior could have been, would have been, and also your bones, right? So the how strong your bones are could tell you what you
your lifestyle.
Right, your lifestyle.
Okay.
So with that being said, if we took that information and said, man, if I had to study my life today, look at the stuff I have today, what would that say about me to someone studying me? What I mean, just with the material stuff you have, I don't care what, just probably look at the things around you. What would that really say about you?
Tell you the story. I got what you're saying. Yep.
Right. What would that story be? Right. And of course you could think of your muscular, not your muscle tissue, but your bone structure. Remember, because your skeleton. You can't look at that. I have 32-inch biceps or something like that, right? Because all that stuff is gone.
Yeah,
it's just bones, right? Yeah. It's just your teeth. It's just stuff that just left, right? And I was thinking about this when we were going over, because the show is about your reality. And we know that people have lived in false realities for factors.
Yes.
Because they could be traumatized, but we keep going over that, but they've changed their reality for either fear purposes or security. But we also, besides those things, we are in a false reality because we have never taken a part of how we are. So all the external stuff is developed who we are now. So that's also going to dictate the stuff we have in a material world, which if we get studied later from an archaeopsychology, it's the society is going to be like, of course he's going to have these things because society dictated he was going to have these material things. His bone structure is going to be this way. His teeth are going to be this way, because the social society, we've studied the majority of these types of people and they all similar because the social system says this is what they'll look like. That's crazy.
That's a fact. No, because this is like my thing is it should do things as best as possible as a human being. Like, as you say, the people will study your artifacts, what you leave behind. And it's all based on how you live your life. It's just do the right things. Like, stay away from drugs. Stay away from drugs. You know what I'm saying? Don't be putting nothing up your nose and shooting up your arm and drinking until you pass out. That's not the way to live, and not to violate people and inflict any kind of abuse in a form, especially sexual predators. I'm not too fond of, you know what I'm saying? Like stuff like that, But basically it's just it comes down to your psyche. If you're a weak individual, you prey upon people, because even the predator is the prey. You know what I'm saying, themselves. So it's.
But I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I really do, and I'll tell you why. Because I think people often are not taught how to behave. They're not taught how to learn. They're not taught how to be cognitive. They're not taught how to be conscious. They're taught how to be part of the social norm, because things are dictated by that, right? They're taught, because remember, they've been studied to be manipulated. So whether they know it or not, they're going to go buy a Toyota or a Kia because you've been marketed to. We call it marketing. We call it whatever, those things. So you have been studied more than you even think about getting pizza. You have just been manipulated because you've never taken part of your personal development through the structure of how you learn. And that's why we're going to get into
I think I got you right here.
Yeah, bring me in there. That's why we're going to get into how the brain really communicates, because you are often more delusional of your false reality because of the way you are communicating with yourself from the outside world.
Gotcha. I hear a doggy. I hear a doggy and your cat.
Yeah. So right here you have the motor cortex, the Broca, right, and the Wernicke area. So these simple areas, they're not simple, but to just bring you in on what they do, these things help you with communication. Right? Gotcha. It is how you take in things. It is how you understand things, and then it is how you relate to them. Right? The Broca area, right? As you can see, it's located in the left frontal lobe. That's where the left frontal lobe is.
All right.
It helps you form words, construct sentences, and it helps you translate. That's the key. Helps you translate into spoken languages.
Got you.
Into a spoken language. So, of course, if it's damaged, you're unable to translate into a language. The Wernicke area, right? It's in the temporal lobe, right? It is the posterior part of the temporal lobe, right? It is responsible. It's responsible for understanding spoken and written language. It helps you understand spoken and written languages. The reason why that's so important is because if you believe you hear something, you're already going to translate it to the rest of the part of the body. You see what I'm saying? It's not what I said, it's what you heard and what you translate to the rest of the part of your body.
Got you.
You
so
see,
it just
you see right. You see where the disconnect comes in from the perception and how you start to communicate with your body, which creates the false reality of the delusion. And we're not even talking about the damage, like a traumatic brain injury or anything like that. We're not even talking about something you get hit hard or concussion or things like that, right?
It's the psyche itself.
It's the psyche itself.
Wow.
If you come up here, I don't know if you can see my arrow. If you come up here and you see that the left hemisphere of the brain where the Broca is, you can see where how it can affect that whole left side, right? The analytical part of thinking, right? mathematics. That means deductive reasoning. Mathematics doesn't mean 1 + 1. It means deductive reasoning. When some people say they're not good at math, what they're really saying, they just cannot figure out stuff.
Got you.
You know, people say, "Oh, man, I'm just not good at math." Well, you're not good at figuring out something.
Figuring things out, exactly.
Right? You kind of need someone to tell you something. That's where that's a problem with, right? The left side controls the right side of the body. Over here, when it comes to the right hemisphere, with communication, awareness, facial recognition, emotional processing. That's where the other temporal lobe is. I'll go back. That's where that Broca area is. It's on the right side.
Wow.
Emotional processing, right? Remember, if you go back to what I said what the Broca area is, it helps you forming words and constructing sentences. It translates.
I think you broke out for a second, Dr. Dyer.
The emotional side. You see how that kind of comes together? So I'm disconnected with a reality. My emotional process, I start to speak in uncontrolled words that hasn't really been processed.
Got you. So
you see how the disconnect of communication is just from an emotional of a disconnect of a process because of the way you're communicating with yourself.
So basically, wow, I'm looking at it the way it's labeled, the emotional processing. Does that come? Some kind of synergy takes place for the emotional processing, because to figure it out as far as the mathematical side, what you say is on reasoning, it has to work with the emotions. So there has to be some synergy taking place along the
Correct.
Process.
So you're so smart. Just by the way where it folds, it does have that bridge that does connect between the folds. So if you don't have good deductive reasoning and your emotional processor is off, you do become very erratic.
It's beautiful. It's so true.
But let's keep going back up. It goes back up to the way you communicate with yourself by what you're translating, right? Now, the heart and the brain communication pathways. You have the cortex, the subcuticle area, the medulla. Now, talking about here is the cortex is here that runs through the brain. Now, as it comes down, the intrinsic nervous system was where the heart is. The heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain to the heart. The heart actually reaches out 16, it's been measured 16 to 18 feet in diameter of what it picks up.
Wow.
So 18 feet and under around you, it picks all these and sends it up to the brain.
Wow.
It's communicating through these different types of feelings and these nerve and issues and vessels and cells. It goes back up to the brain. It gets processed in here.
Wow. Parietal lobe, occipital lobe, cerebellum, brainstem, temporal lobe, frontal lobe. Can you get into that for us, Dr. Dyer?
Absolutely. But we're only stick with the communication part, right? Remember, this is split between left and right. Right? You have the frontal, the temporal, the temporal lobe, the brainstem. The brainstem is the last part that sends everything down to the rest of the part of the body.
Got
The
you.
brainstem it controls temperature, it controls heart rate, and it controls your breathing. But it's the last stop between everything that comes down into. It has the full package. It has the full Amazon package to send it to every part of your body. So whatever gets stuck there, it's gone. That's why your breathing becomes erratic. That's why your organs become this or whatever that. So your temperature rises or lowers because of all the different things that it's receiving. So, and that's why the heart goes also back up through the vagus nerve. So we got into that late in a different show too. But let's go back to the frontal lobe with the thinking, the speaking. We know that's part of the prefrontal, right? The primary motor cortex, the Broca, right? Because it affects your speech and it affects your frontal lobe, which is your thinking.
Yeah. I got you.
Right? And then over here, the partial, you have a hard time with reading. That means, what do you call it? Reading? When they say reading, they really mean like
comprehension,
interpretation.
Yeah.
Right. See, it always says right here, understanding languages. Right. Cerebellum is really physical coordination. But when they also talk about balance of information. Right? Balance of information. That's why also down here where you call attention. You're not really, you have a hard time with attention. So balance of information. All this comes from, let's go back here. All this comes from your lack of the way you communicate with yourself from the delusional state of what you interpret. This comes from interpretation. If you just clarify, just think of this. If someone said something and you just clarify what it is they said, what it is you read, what it is you heard, and you clarify, none of this disillusion would ever take place.
You own one, Dr. Dyer. I get it. I get where you're coming from. I understand 100%. I get it.
So if you go back into studying who you are and verify, is this who I want to be? You would break that illusion in your communication to yourself.
That's a fact. Be honest.
Yeah. Is that simple? You just gotta be honest.
No, be honest. Don't, man. Yeah, you're right, because you're putting too much on your psyche when you basically, it's like be honest, if you're a cigarette smoker or a cigar smoker, right, it's basically you're tricking yourself to believe like this is good for me. I know Warden General say this is going to be dangerous, but I'm gonna trick my mind into believing, you know what, this is good for me, but it's beneficial along the way. So it's like that. So I see what you're saying. The reasoning has to be right and exact, as they put it.
What if you're psyching yourself out of thinking that you are successful? What if you're psyching yourself into wanting to be successful and not willing to put in the work and ask for help?
That's a delusion right there.
You see what I mean? I mean, there's all these types of miscommunication with what you are. So, or what you're creating. That I'm not saying what you are. What you're wanting to really create, right?
Exactly.
If you want to create the great I am, then use good fruit. And I think that's important. So as we go here, You have the motor. You have the sensory areas. This is also comes with communication. All these are broken down into how the regions of the different areas of how the brain is communicating, how it receives the sensory associated area. That's, you see where it's connected to the Wernicke area, and that's the sensor. So let's go back to what that area does, right? Do you remember what the Wernicke area did? Right, the Wernicke area is the left temporal lobe, right? And it is the understanding, underline, highlight, big bold letters, understanding spoken and written language.
Got you.
Right? What if you didn't understand?
Oh my God.
If you didn't understand and it's in the sensory area, all your senses are now softened, not
functioning correctly.
Yeah, it's not at. If everything's supposed to be at 10, it's not at 10. It could be at 6. It could be at
It's
5.
not optimal.
Right.
I
It's
got
not
you.
optimal.
I got you. So being that with that aspect of the Wernicke's not processing things, how can one go about to, how should I say, stimulate to exercise that independently?
Well, you know, there are everywhere in the world besides the West, because the West is so young, has worked on things to stimulation, to be sensitive to the earth, the stars, right, the planets. The natives, the First Nation people have done it. The Eastern countries have done it. I mean, everybody's done it with the different types of practices. I mean, without even saying it, people just know what I'm talking about, right? Through the Eastern arts, to just to
on ginkgo biloba,
right. Just do. There's been so many that people are now starting to come out and starts going, oh, this makes me feel so much more alive. Those are the sensory practices and arts. I don't ever want to promote one or the other, because I might miss one, really. But I don't want to miss one, because when you dedicate yourself into becoming vulnerable to all things of this planet, so you can be part of all things, right? I like to say be part of all things that matter, and I mean in the science term, all things of matter, because everything is made of matter, right?
Exactly.
So you become all, and that's how I study my martial practices and my meditation. You lower yourself to the grain of sand of the smallest of sand, right?
Yeah.
All things, right? That's how you practice it. You become sensitive. Now, would that make you cry more? I'm going to tell you yes, because you're not going to be that exterior heart anymore. You're not. Right, your heart's going to be open. You're going to feel more. You're going to see more. You're going to experience more. The colors are going to be more vibrant. But
I got what you're taking.
Yeah, but things are going to flow through you. So you're going to be able to connect more. But if you get sad, you're going to be sad more. But it doesn't mean you have to be depressed. You can be sad. You don't have to be depressed. You can be sad.
So, Dr. Dyer, just to be safe, and again, we're not endorsing this, as you said. Neither that Dr. Dyer, for the record, nor me, NYP. Are we talking about compounds of psilocybin, those agents for people?
Yeah.
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca. Yeah. They help you open up those clogged areas. But even if you do those assistance, right? Those assistants are supposed to help you assist in your practice, if you just use it to be the vehicle only, you're still going to remain stuck afterwards.
Got you. I got you. You know what's so great about that science, and I'm glad you touched on that. It's like from the reports that I have read and documentaries that I have watched, people speak of their experiences, and as you mentioned, like removing blockages within their minds, emotional obstacles, and a person may have been addicted to some kind of narcotic. It somehow broke that hold from them, and they were able to tap into their emotions more. And they say they see things clear, as you mentioned, colors. They could process information and so many other things. Why is it? We already know for obvious reason, but why is it's shunned upon? Because you're the first doctor I hear to speak about that. Many others try not to touch on that as much.
Well, you know what I mean. I know it's taught to be shunned upon.
Got you.
Because now we're going back into the manipulation of why humans have been studied.
That's why.
Right? So we're going back to the original statement. Remember, humans have been studied. Melanin people have been studied the most. We've been here the longest. So we can manipulate you to block you from that knowledge. Right? If I block your sensory, if I block the way you communicate, then I can input what I want to input you to, so you can download it. So now I can control you. It's really what it is. So right. It's manipulation is a form of control, right? So if I can manipulate you, you're going to eventually do what I need you to do, right? And that's why when I talk about the archaeopsychology, if you look at the stuff you have right now as your material, what does that say about you? Does that mean you have been controlled, manipulated? Or have you learned to develop who you are into the I am with the way you communicate with yourself, so you can start changing of how your body is being communicated with how you are doing it.
Got you. So basically, awakening. And it's funny, we had this talk last week on the show. Awakening the God within.
Yeah.
Got you. Because you know what, Dr. Dyer, I'm so glad that we have you on this platform, because there are many others, including myself at one point, people out there that we just used to pick up these self-help books, right? And they'll just say, if you think this way, but they don't break it down for me. They go through stories. Well, I had a client that did this and that, and they don't really give you like a work.
The science.
Yeah, nothing is broken down. It's just by the book.
Yeah, and that's what I've been saying this for years. Some people say, well, Dr. Dyer, what do you do? I said, well, I explain the science of emotions, but of why. Like, instead of just think this, feel good, take this, be good, smell this, whatever, I explain why it works, or why it can do what it can do.
Yeah.
Right? I don't care if it's food to whatever. I can explain the science of it. Right? Most of those people, they understand their science, but of how it works for whatever they are talking about, but they really can't get into, and that's fine. Stay in your lane, I guess. I don't know what to say.
You're right about that. As I say, to each their own, right?
Right.
Like, it worked for you, it may not work for me, but I respect it. If it makes you a better human being, I'm all for it, by all means. But I'm more. Go ahead.
When it came to the brain, I was just such a badger, because it's so beautiful of historical context, right? Like, the tools early man used was part of a development of the brain that got him to use it. You know what I mean? That stuff is so cool.
Exactly. No, it is.
the way early man walked to how they walk now was because of a partial development of a part of the brain, right? That's amazing to me. It didn't just happen. It was evolving and forming because it needed it to be so it could progress in an area and in an environment it needed to live in.
I love how you tap on that. That's like transfiguration right there.
Right.
Limitations. So it's like the transfiguration to a metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly. Like, is it the mind that makes them do that? Like, are you touching them to that degree?
Yes. Right. That's why it is so harmful that we have never, many of us, maybe again, because we've never been taught, no one's ever told us, no one's ever said this was important, that we can be the creator that we are. We've heard this maybe before by different platforms, whatever, right? And that we could be the creator, but they didn't teach us the science of why we are the creator.
They just dictate words to you.
Right. So the science of why we're the creator is why we can be evolved into what we could be, is what we decide to be.
Got you.
But you have to have the information to really make a decision. If you don't have the information, you still don't have a choice. You're still being manipulated.
Somebody asking a question. Communication clearly and be specific says, how do we rewire the brain system? They taught us the art of it, but not the science of it. So just so like Dr. Dyer was saying, he'd like to know, how can we do that, Dr. Dyer?
Well, there's a class going on now. How I'm teaching how to rewire the brain. So you missed that. You missed the beginning of that class. We're actually, our students and I, we're in the fourth week of the class of teaching how we rewire the brain. But to answer your question in short, is to watch the other podcasts.
Last episode.
We'll watch many others in succession, and you'll get those answers. That's a way. But to answer you here on the podcast, it takes learning, understanding, and training. So that's the answer. What do we learn? We learn what I'm talking about today is going to help you. How am I communicating with myself? How am I translating the information I am listening to, hearing, reading, and am I clarifying that information to myself in a clear manner? Because if it's not, then all what we talked about thus far is why we are so uneven, unbalanced. Right? So, which is why we can be manipulated.
Exactly.
So, I hope I answered the young man's.
Yeah, you did. He said thank you because he's gonna watch the other videos.
Okay, because it, yeah.
Nah, I got what you said, Dr. Dyer, which makes so much sense. It's the rewiring. You said, the things like you're consistently studied from what you left behind, and everything that you basically explained just painted the whole picture. As you said, we have been studied for years from what we left behind. Man himself has been studied based on what you left behind, and it could tell you a lot about the man. So I got what you're saying.
And thank you. Anybody can ask even more questions at any time. So, and now, and before we I know we have several more minutes, and I want to go back into. I want people to think about what does if you were to look at your life as an psychologist,
Mm-hmm.
what would the stuff around you, your material, your things say about your behavior, your life, right? What
Mm-hmm.
is the stuff around you? What does it say? Because it will tell the story about who you are. And
Mm-hmm.
if that's not the story you want to say, then that story, just think about this. The things around you, then you have been manipulated into creating this story that was never created by you.
Exactly. Hmm. Very true.
And and that should give you the sign or something, be like, I need to start rewriting my personal story. I need to start creating my I am. Like, what type of person does this? Who thinks like this? And what am I thinking? What am I creating? What am I developing? What type of analytical thinker am I? What type of emotional processor am I? Look at your materials. Does your materials tell you what type of emotional processor you are? Does it tell you do you have deductive reasoning? Does it tell you have spatial awareness? Does it tell you have you're sensitive?
So
So
before I read this brother's question, so from what you're saying, it sounds like we are living in the illusion of multiple choice. What is it really given to us? Is it really our free will, or is it's what was been presented to us, basically? So this is going to
say that
piggyback.
again.
We live in a world basically of the illusion of having multiple choice, of having free will, because it's multiple choice. So no matter
You,
what is presented,
I don't think people have free will as much as you think you do.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
No, people think they have free will. They don't. They only have free will when they have the information of how they're receiving it. Then they have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to say if you have a choice, you have free will, then I will agree with you. But if you don't have the information and understand how you're processing and living, then you're really not living in free will. You're living in the manipulation part because you don't even know how you're living or how you're being formed. Right. So should everybody know
Mm-hmm.
about the brain and the muscle tissues and things and food and stomach? Maybe not to the degree I do, but they should know something, right? They should know how they process food. They should know how their body is being developed. They should
Mm-hmm.
know certain things, right? Just like should you know how to rebuild a car to drive it? No, but you should know certain things. You
Right.
know, it's just certain things you should know that certain people don't know. It's almost like I don't know if you should be driving. You
Yeah.
know, do you know what type of gas to put in your car? Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Do you know the type of windshield wiper, oil? Do you know how to change a tire? Not that you like to or
Mm-hmm.
could. Do you know how to? If none of those work, I'm not sure if driving's really kind of safe. I feel that way about the development of the body and the spirit, right?
Mm.
And the brain. I just do. There's certain things we ought to know. If you don't know it, then someone else is doing it for you.
Exactly. You're right about that. So communicate clearly is asking, is this what happens when we live other people's dreams and desires?
Yes. And the reason why more often people live other people's dreams and desires is because the types of families dictate it to us through what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
And we never took over what we wanted. And some people could say, well, I want to honor, not to beget anything. I wanted to be honor my parents or my seniors, and they said I needed to be whatever, right? And I love them, so that's why I did it. Well, as nice as that is, you're living their life and not yours. That's simple. If you're, I would question if you're happy, you know, because you didn't develop it. They did, you know.
So it's like they living basically through you, vicariously through you. So it's like a lot of people. Yeah.
Now, if you came to it anyway, that's kind of neat. But there's so many dictations that you oughta, you should, you know, be seen, not heard.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conflicts in developing the conscious mind. So, and remember, if 90 to reprogram and to understand, to rethink, you have to develop consciousness. And 95% of people live in subconscious behavior. It's habitual. It's habitual behavior. 95% of the things you do is habit. We talked about this in another podcast. The mind wants to put things in habit form, so it uses less energy.
Very true. Very true. Back to what you said, so you don't have to use the left side. Just make it second nature. It's just, you know, you got a lot of questions right here. Does food have anything to do with rewiring the nervous system?
Well, yeah. I mean, the simple answer is everything is connected. Who you make love with, who you touch, who you're around, what you eat. Absolutely. Where it's grown. Because your body takes that form of intake from food to touch. It takes it in and changes it to something. Right? I'll leave it at that. It changes into something. Right? When it changes into something, then the body utilizes it for something else.
Energy, yep.
Right? It's either going to be beneficial or not beneficial.
And it's true.
So
the food does play a part. It plays a major part. The brain, not to cut you, doctor. The brain sends the signals down to the digesters and all that. So it does play a part because it over exhausts itself to break down the compounds of the food, and that's when you start feeling lethargic and the brain fog kicks in and everything. Am I correct with that?
You're correct, but you know, you can go down the road of why, but once it changes into beneficial, not beneficial, we could talk about why it's beneficial and how come, and right, or why it is beneficial and the reasons why. But just stick with the science of it changes. The molecular structure changes into something. It's either going to be beneficial. We could talk about that. It's going to be not beneficial. We could talk about that.
Got you. 100%. And Sue says it's all frequency.
Okay, so when it comes all down with it how everything works, when it changes the temperature in the body, changes the frequency in the body. Collectively.
Wow. That's Dr. Dyer really dropping that science. So I have one more thing. Like you said for facial recognition, you said the right side deals with that, right?
Yes.
I thought, you know, being that the left side, the logical side, is the one that captures everything and it processes it and sends it over.
Okay.
I thought that was on the left side of the brain.
No, facial recognition is right side. It's remember, the right side has a lot more of creativity and things like that. So
that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because we all have different types of faces and shapes, so it has to be recognizing those shapes and patterns and things like that. It's very artistic.
So all right. So you say with deleting the illusion of sickness. All right, because I deal with this at times. The process of stuttering. Which part that comes from the motor speech side of the part of the brain, right? How
Right.
can one find a way to resolve that? What can be
Well,
done?
so stuttering could have started from birth by factors. Hearing broken languages
Of course. Oh wow.
around them.
Yeah.
So the young person didn't know which language to speak. So it was getting confused between, like, say if there's two different types of languages spoken in the house. So as a young child, it doesn't know which language to connect with because they hear the sounds of two,
Exactly.
right? So that's where stuttering comes in, or um, uh, nervousness.
Mm-hmm.
If a child is nerves,
Mm-hmm.
um, 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 visual traumatic will cause a child to stutter.
Mm,
If they see something, whatever they see, it causes a shock, and it'll cause the child to stutter.
got you.
Um, that's young stutter. That's like, for early ages to like 16 months or something, 17 months. Later, it could become, reason why it could become not corrected is because it's not attended to. That's
Yeah.
really why it becomes longer. That's all. Or
All
we're
right.
not even talking about the damaging, like a fall,
Yeah.
or I mean, because it could happen because of lack of oxygen too
The
at
brain.
birth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
So there's some sicknesses, virus and things like that, but outside of illness, or traumatic issue, or something like that, the other stuff causes the brain to recognize and to cause a little bit of confusion.
I'm glad you clarified that for me because growing up, that did start some of the speech impediment because I'm taking so many different languages in. My
Mm-hmm.
mom's speaking the native language. I'm going to school with English. I was born here, but I'm learning Creole. And Creole is like that's the home language at home. Then I'm going to school with the English, you know, and I'm going back home to a Creole household. Then there's Spanish at times, and there's
Yeah.
French. So I'm taking all that in, and how language, how it's directed at, say, the frequency. It's like the processing is different, as you mentioned. I'm glad you brought that up because some countries are either left to right or right to left, so you got to process it what they're saying from that language to
Mm-hmm.
translate to make sense to you. Like when people tell like old fables, old stories, like it sounds better in that language, so you got to break it down so it
Mm-hmm.
could be conveyed correctly. So I'm like, oh, that may have created part of the speech impediment.
I think we're over time, brother.
We are. Yeah, we are. Definitely. I don't want to hold you up. Yeah, Dr. Dyer. Thank you very much, my brother, for coming on. People in the comment, peace to you all. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe. This was a great show. NYP, and we out. Peace.
Peace.